3:17 a.m. Astrakhan time. The desert sits, pitch black wind cutting like a knife. Russia is running final system checks on a missile sitting exposed on its launch stand. And Oreshnik, the hypersonic Mach 10+ weapon Putin bragged nobody can stop just weeks ago when he lobbed one at Lviv. Suddenly from the south, a massive black shape screams in at ground level doing 590 miles per hour, carrying 2,540 pounds of high explosive. That's Ukraine's FP-5 Flamingo, a heavy cruise missile made in UA, making its first official combat debut tonight. But this isn't just one missile coming in hot. Russia thought Kapustin was untouchable after the New START treaty died yesterday. They're about to learn what a real nightmare looks like. Will that Oreshnik prototype sitting on the stand blow up right where it sits? Let's watch Russia get served tonight. A strong warning has been delivered. The New START arms control treaty officially expires on February 5th. Putin and his spokesman Peskov announced to the world that Russia is no longer bound by restrictions, but will act responsibly. Translation, they're about to crank out as many intermediate-range nuclear missiles as they want, aimed straight at Europe, launched from deep inside Russia where NATO can't touch them. And Kapustin, sitting 400 to 500 miles from the Ukrainian border in the middle of nowhere, becomes their favorite playground. Russia massed several Oreshnik prototypes at the test site. These are solid fuel missiles, quick to prep, quick to launch, but right now they're in system check mode, sitting on outdoor launch stands while Russian engineers upload targeting codes and run diagnostics. The missiles are practically gift-wrapped. To protect this precious program, Russia upgraded the air defenses around Kapustin Yar. S-400 batteries with radar coverage out to 250 miles. Pantsir systems are ready to swat anything out of the sky. A shiny new S-500 system, and MiG-31 interceptors on patrol. After Ukrainian drone strikes hit Russian sites in 2024 and 2025, Moscow is convinced they've finally locked the door this time. They think Kapustin is a fortress. But here's the problem. If Russia successfully test fires another Oreshnik from this site, NATO faces a brand new nuclear arms race. And Ukraine has to stop this threat at the source. Ukrainian intelligence fed by American satellites and partisan spotters inside Russia knows exactly what's happening at Kapustin Yar. They know the Oreshnik prototypes are sitting out in the open, they see the launch schedule, and they know Russia is cocky enough to believe nobody would dare strike this deep. So Ukraine decides hit them before they can launch. But as I said, and indeed it is, this attack is extremely difficult. Russia has actually increased the difficulty 5-fold compared to the last time Ukraine successfully launched a strike. Therefore, the first priority is to dismantle this defense system. 2 hours before impact, Ukraine commits hard. Wave 1 unleashes 50 Trembita Decoy drones, Ukraine's homegrown radar deception beasts. Each one stretches 10 feet long with a wide wingspan engineered to mimic the exact radar cross-section and flight profile of a real cruise missile. The range exceeds 600 miles, cost per unit is barely a few $1,000s. These aren't cheap throwaways, they are purpose-built to force Russia to treat this as a serious all-in assault. Interspersed among them are jammer drones pumping out powerful false cruise missile signatures, flooding Russian receivers with noise and forcing overload from the very first seconds. Russian early warning radars light up instantly. Foreign Asian containers scream contact. The entire air defense grid snaps to maximum alert. Pantsir S-1 batteries spin their guns skyward and unleash barrages. Each 30mm autocannon and missile pod erupts in rapid fire. Tor-M, 2 systems lock and ripple fire short-range interceptors, bright streaks tearing into the darkness. Explosions bloom across the horizon, one after another after another. Trembitas disintegrate in mid-air wings, shear off fuselages, shred into fireballs, debris rains down like burning confetti. But the swarm keeps coming. For every 10 Trembitas, Russia swats down 5 more slip through the initial curtain of fire. Pantsir crews reload, frantically burning through expensive 57 E-6 missiles at a terrifying rate, each one costing hundreds of thousands of dollars to take out drones worth pocket change. Russian Pantsir radar domes glow red-hot from continuous firing. Barrels overheat and smoke pours from cooling vents. Tor launchers empty their tubes in seconds, forcing frantic reloads under combat pressure. Higher-up S-400 battalions join the frenzy. Long-range 40 N6 missiles streak skyward at Mach 14, aimed at the densest clusters of signatures. Massive fireballs erupt when they connect. Entire groups of Trembitas vanish in blinding flashes. It's economic warfare at its finest. Russia is spending $1 million per interceptor to kill bargain bin decoys. Classic Russian efficiency. But here's the twist. Russia doesn't see coming. After losing several A-50 AWACS aircraft in 2024 and 2025, some shot down by Ukraine, others damaged beyond repair, Russia doesn't dare fly their remaining radar planes anywhere near contested airspace. That means they're relying entirely on ground-based radar. And ground-based radar has a fatal blind spot at low altitude, especially over flat desert terrain. Ukraine is about to drive a truck through that blind spot. Wave 2 launches next, 4 to 5 FP-5 Flamingo missiles, but these aren't the standard versions. These are anti-radiation variants equipped with seekers that lock onto active radar emissions. They launch from Ukrainian territory, drop to terrain masking altitude, and use the curvature of the Earth to stay below the S-400's detection envelope. The Pantsir systems around Kapustin are scanning aggressively, trying to catch any low-altitude threats. The moment their radars go active, they light up like Christmas trees on Ukraine's sensors. The Flamingo missiles detect the emissions, lock on, and adjust course automatically. Inside the Russian command bunker, alarms are screaming. Incoming swarm detected large formation approaching from the south. The base commander scrambles MiG-31 interceptors, but it's too late. The Flamingos are flying at 16,000 feet, threading through gaps in radar coverage, and they're too fast for the interceptors to catch before impact. The Anti-Radiation Flamingos slam into the Pantsir radar domes. Direct hits. The explosions rip through the delicate antenna arrays, shredding the electronics inside. In seconds, Russia's point defense coverage around the launch site develops gaping holes. The Russian commander stares at his screen as red X's mark dead air defense nodes. He's just lost his eyes and most of his close-in protection. And the main attack wave hasn't even arrived yet. 30 minutes to impact. Wave 3 hits. This is the saturation phase. Ukraine launches a mix of dummy FP-5 missiles lighter variants with reduced warheads but identical radar signatures to the real thing, along with another swarm of decoys. The goal isn't to destroy anything. The goal is to overload the system. Russia's S-400 batteries detect multiple cruise missile profiles inbound. Their fire control computers start prioritizing targets, assigning interceptors to the biggest threats. But half of those threats are fakes. The S-400 batteries burn through their missile inventory, shooting at phantoms. The Russian operators are sweating now. Their screens are cluttered with contacts, their computers are lagging like they're running Windows 95, and they're watching their interceptor count drop towards zero with no idea which targets are real. Back at Russian headquarters, the mood is tense but not panicked. They think this is just another harassment strike, annoying but manageable. After all, they upgraded the defenses. They've got this under control. So they don't raise the nuclear alert level to maximum. They don't evacuate the Oreshnik missiles from the stands. The engineers keep working, running diagnostics, checking fuel lines, and uploading targeting data. It's the kind of arrogance that gets them paid. 0 hour. The main strike package arrives. 8 to 10 FP-5 Flamingo heavy cruise missiles, the real deal this time. Each one weighs about 13,000 pounds, fully loaded with a wingspan of 20 feet and a Ukrainian-built turbofan engine pushing it to 590 miles per hour. The composite airframe keeps the radar cross-section low. The terrain masking flight profile keeps them below most of Russia's search radars. And they've got a range of 1,900 miles, more than enough to cover the 400 to 500 miles from Ukraine to Kapustin Yar and still have fuel to loiter. The Flamingos split into attack groups. The first group goes to the main hangar where additional Oreshnik components are stored. The second group targets the launch stands where 2 to 3 missiles are sitting exposed mid-prep. The lead Flamingo drops to 50 feet above the desert floor using its terrain-following radar to hug every dip and rise in the landscape. Russian radar operators catch fleeting glimpses of fast-moving contacts but can't get a solid lock. The remaining Pantsir systems try to engage, but their radar coverage is Swiss cheese after the earlier anti-radiation strikes. At 3:17 a.m. and 42 seconds, the first Flamingo slams into the main hangar. The 2,540-pound warhead detonates on impact, punching through the reinforced walls and igniting everything inside. But that's just the spark. Inside the hangar, fuel containers and Oreshnik components explode in a massive secondary blast. The fireball climbs hundreds of feet into the night sky, turning the desert bright as daylight. The shockwave flattens nearby structures and shatters windows a mile away. 2 seconds later, the second Flamingo hits Launch Stand 28. The Oreshnik sitting there is mid-fueling. Its tanks are about 40% full of solid propellant. The missile doesn't just explode, it erupts. The shaped charge warhead from the Flamingo ignites the propellant, and the entire missile becomes a volcano. Burning fuel sprays in every direction, coating the stand, the support equipment, and the nearby ground crew in liquid fire. Russian engineers are running for their lives, screaming into radios. Evacuate, evacuate now! The third Flamingo targets Launch Stand 105, where another Oreshnik is in system check mode. This time the missile's guidance computer is still powered on when the warhead detonates. The explosion fries every circuit, melts the guidance section, and warps the structural frame beyond repair. Even if they recover the missile, it's never flying again. One Flamingo takes a lucky hit from a Pantsir that managed to get a firing solution. The missile breaks apart mid-flight, scattering debris across the desert. But even in death, it serves a purpose. Its wreckage reveals the position of the Pantsir that shot it down, and the follow-up wave adjusts course to finish the job. Inside the Ukrainian command bunker, hundreds of miles away, operators watch the infrared feeds from overhead drones. They see the fireballs bloom one after another, painting the desert in orange and white. Sweat drips down faces, hands shake, then someone grins. Splash target. Confirmed hits on primary objectives. 5 minutes after the main strikes, 3:22 a.m., a full-scale attack was launched just when Russia thought Ukraine had ended its campaign. The follow-up wave arrives, 4 to 6 more Flamingos targeting secondary objectives. One group hits the site's main power facility, cutting electricity to the entire complex. Another group targets the fuel depot and maintenance buildings. The goal is to maximize disruption and delay recovery. Russia scrambles everything they have left. MiG-31s finally arrive on station, but the low-altitude cruise missiles are already past the outer defenses. The interceptors make a few half-hearted passes, but can't catch anything in the dark without ground radar support. The remaining Pantsir systems are blind, low on ammo, or already destroyed. Russia's vaunted S-400, their latest and greatest air defense system, manages to shoot down one Flamingo an impressive feat, but it can't stop the other 5. By 3:30 a.m., Kapustin Yar is a disaster zone. Multiple fires burn out of control. The power is out. Half the air defense network is offline. And the Oreshnik program just took a sledgehammer to the face. Ukrainian planners, watching from their secure bunker, allow themselves a moment of satisfaction. Russia thought the site was untouchable. Ukraine just turned its fortress into a barbecue pit. The damage is catastrophic on every level. 2 to 3 Oreshnik prototypes were destroyed on their stands. The main hangar is a smoking crater. 6 Pantsir systems are damaged or destroyed. One S-400 battery was damaged by shrapnel and is offline. Russia's most advanced missile program just lost months, maybe years of progress. The pre-launch facility is wrecked. Fuel storage is compromised. Power infrastructure is down. Maintenance equipment is burning. Russia will have to move the entire test program to a different site, which means starting over with new infrastructure, new security, and new everything. That's going to cost billions and take months. Russia's propaganda machine spent weeks bragging that the Oreshnik was unstoppable, that Kapustin Yar was a fortress, that Ukraine couldn't reach them this deep inside Russian territory. All of that just got exposed as a lie. Russia is forced to pull air defense assets from the front lines and redeploy them to protect interior sites. The Oreshnik program is delayed indefinitely. NATO gets a breather from the nuclear escalation threat. And Ukraine just proved that its homegrown FP-5 Flamingo can strike deep into Russia and hit hardened targets with precision. This isn't the end of the story, it's just the opening act. Russia will retaliate. They always do. But for now, Ukraine has seized the initiative and Moscow is scrambling to figure out what the hell just happened. So here's the billion-dollar question. If you're Putin, how do you protect your remaining strategic sites after Ukraine just proved they can hit you this deep? Do you spread everything out across dozens of locations, making logistics impossible? Do you bury everything underground, which costs a fortune and takes years? Or do you admit the uncomfortable truth that in the age of long-range precision strikes, nowhere is truly safe? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you think Ukraine just changed the rules of this war, smash that like button. Russia lost the New START treaty and thought they could do whatever they wanted. Ukraine just reminded them every action has a consequence. And sometimes that consequence arrives at 590 miles per hour, carrying 2,540 pounds of don't get cocky. This is just the first night. The nightmare isn't over yet. See you in the next breakdown.